I am Megan and welcome to Battle Royale with Cheese, where we're looking at all of your TV and film news, reviews and trailers. And yeah, apologies, it's been a couple of weeks since the last video again. I've been really unwell. I did go and see Mortal Kombat 2. However, I did put a community post up about this. I unfortunately actually didn't really have anything to say about it. I enjoyed it. It was fun. But that's it. I can't really stretch that out into a big video. However, I did also see ProjectHailMary. I've finally seen this. It did come out a couple of months ago. It's still in my local cinema. I think it's going to be there for like another month or so. And it definitely deserves it because this film's fantastic. Directed by Lord and Miller and written by Drew Goddard and Andy Weir. This is the adaptation of the book by Andy Weir and follows a middle school teacher as he wakes up in a spaceship and discovers that he has been sent on a mission to a faraway planet to save humanity because the sun is dying. So before we get into this, I am going to say now, because it's been out for quite a long time and I've only just got around to seeing it, this is going to be a spoiler video. I'm going to talk about anything. This video might not contain spoilers, it might do, but I am not going to be putting a spoiler warning in here. Obviously there will be in the title and the thumbnail, but that is it. This is your spoiler warning now. If you're like me and haven't seen ProjectHailMary, this is your warning. This is going to be full of spoilers. I also haven't read the book, but I definitely want to now because this film's fantastic. I really, really love this film. I didn't really have any expectations going into this, to be honest. The only thing I had seen was a couple of the scenes to do with Rocky, who I'll talk about in a minute, but that was kind of it. I didn't really know what this was about. I didn't really have too much expectations. I knew Ryan Gosling was in it and about Rocky, and that's kind of it. I definitely want to read the book now because I've heard there's some interesting differences between the book and the film. Ryan Gosling plays Ryland Grace, a middle school teacher who is confirmed that yes, the sun is dying, and he eventually wakes up in said spaceship with his memory completely gone. He cannot remember how he got there, and as the film goes on, his memory comes back and we get to see flashbacks of how this happened. And Ryan Gosling for me isn't really an actor that I've loved or liked. I think a lot of his films I haven't really got on with his acting, but for me it's a bit similar with my thoughts with Nicolas Cage as well, where I feel like he's been put in the wrong films. So it wasn't until like Barbie, Fall Guy, I think The Nice Guys was another one a while back, that he's great in those, and those films suit him. When it's emotional but also has comedic moments. Like, this film's funny. This film's really funny. But he also does well with the emotional moments. There's also a lot of emotional moments in here. Like I said, I had no expectations going into this, aside from a couple of things. And yeah, I think I laughed just as much as I cried. But both tones work, and he's great with both. And I don't think he's so good with one or the other. Like, he can't do something that's just comedy, he can't do something that's just serious. I don't really think he's very good at it, but he can hit with both in one film. And he's great at switching between those tones very, very well. He's also a character you care about from the moment the film starts, and it's interesting that this doesn't have a title reveal at the beginning. The film just starts and then you're in it. And the film does a very good job of making you care for him. Right from the start, we are with him. We don't know what's going on either, just like him. We're along the journey with him and, learning as the film goes along of what happened, what's going on, how he got here. And I think that's why, aside from he's, a caring character, I think it's also the fact that we're along with him the whole time is what makes him a really sympathetic and caring character, an interesting character. Sandra Hüller plays Eva Stratt, and this is where comparisons to the book come in, because now that I've seen the film, I have looked at some comments on social media and comparisons to the book. And apparently in the book, she's a lot more cold. She's a lot more, I don't know if mean is the right word, but a bit more of a horrible character compared to the film. I thought she was really interesting. I have also seen that a lot of people portray her as a villain. This is where the spoiler's going to come in. So there's the scene where we find out how Grace ended up on the spaceship. So basically what happened was Sun is dying and the stars around it are dying because it's being infected with astrophage. And they've discovered that there's one planet that isn't being infected and they want to go and find out why. They find out that astrophage is very powerful. It can destroy a crap ton of metal in a very short amount of time. And the reason why Grace ends up going on is as a replacement. A couple of the astronauts who are supposed to go on the mission end up dying, and he has to go instead. He is the only one that can go and can replace them. And I thought the scene where he gets told this was really interesting, because this is kind of where you'll think, well, Eva is a villain or not a very nice character. I think she was perfect. I think that she's very direct. She doesn't soft coat anything or sugarcoat anything. And she's very like, no, this is the situation. This is what has to happen. And you need someone like that to be a team leader in this situation. You can't have someone who's just dilly-dallying and softening things and softening facts for someone. You need someone who's very direct, who's like, no, my role in this is to carry out a mission to save humanity. And I did kind of feel for her as well in this scene, because there is a moment when she basically tells Grace that, yeah, sorry, you're going on this mission no matter what. Like, I think the phrase is like, I'm trying to get you to understand what I'm about to do next. And he runs off, and the guards in the building chase after him and drug him. And you can tell as she's talking to him and as she's saying all this stuff, there is a point where, you can see in her face that she doesn't want to do this. But she has no choice. There's a bigger picture here. So I didn't really see her as a villain or a good person. She had to do what she had to do to carry out a mission. And I thought she was a very interesting character. I think one of the biggest scenes that I bawled in did involve her. There's a karaoke scene on the ship. I think it's the night before they're about to go on the mission, or a couple of days before they're about to go on the mission. And they're all, the astronauts are getting drunk, doing karaoke, just partying. They know they're going to die in space. They know it's a one-way trip. So they're just having fun and, living as if it's going to be their last. And either after sort of saying, like, oh, I don't want to get involved, I've got to keep my walls up and not get attached, essentially. She does come back in, and I think it's for Grace, because Grace basically says that it's good to give them a bit of humanity, to show them that there is a part of you that kind of cares. I'm paraphrasing, but that's essentially what the scene was. And she does come back in and she sings, I think it's called Sign of the Times, by Harry Styles. I did not expect to get as emotional as I did, because you could see in her face as she was finishing up the part of the song that she wanted to finish up, you could tell that she was finally realising the emotional toll of the mission, the humans that she was looking at. She is never going to see those people again. Like, once they go into space, that's it. Once they get into the spaceship, she's never going to see them again. She knows they're going to die. And the moment where she goes, she finishes singing and goes, okay, that's enough of that, and walks off, you could tell that she was starting to get emotional. She was starting to realise the full scale of this mission on an emotional and human level. And I think that was really interesting. It was a very interesting scene. But then you've also got a lot of humorous moments as well. And this is where I'm going to start talking about Rocky. It has to be done. We've got to talk about Rocky. So Rocky's a really interesting character, not just in terms of his character on screen, but with how he came about, and especially his voice. So he is voiced by James Ortiz, who is the main puppeteer for Rocky. Basically what happened is, as they were filming, he was a stand-in voice originally, before they were going to get someone else. And as they continued filming on, the cast and crew realised actually Ryan Gosling has gotten used to that voice and acted against it very, very well. And Rocky and Grace their friendship is fantastic. I loved it so much. But they realise that actually, why are we trying to cast someone when we've already got a voice for him already? And I really, really like that, because they didn't have to do that. They could have just continued on to cast someone else. But I'm glad that they did, and they made this decision, because it really, really works. And yeah, Rocky's delightful. Amaze. I'm sure you've all seen the scenes of him rolling around in that hamster ball and knocking everything over. Yeah, he's fantastic. But what you find out is that him and Grace are on the same mission. He is there also to save his planet. And like I said earlier, the chemistry between Grace and Rocky is fantastic. Like, you can tell that Rocky was a physical puppet when they were filming. I have heard that there wasn't, like, any green screen involved. It was all practical in one way or another, which I think is amazing. If that is true, because I've heard that, but I don't know if it's been confirmed. If that is true, that's amazing. But you can tell that this is a physical thing, that Rocky is a physical thing on set. Because it's very obvious with Ryan Gosling's acting against his. Yeah, this was fantastic. And their friendship was so adorable. Chaotic at times, but adorable. Before I get into my one problem with the film, I do have just one problem with it. But I want to talk about the music and the cinematography, because I think they're also interesting as well. And I feel like they play such a huge part in this film. The cinematography, I think, is really interesting, because before Grace actually goes into space, before you get that flashback, there's a lot of like swirling shots. Like, the camera sort of turns around to transition to the next scene. There's a lot of sort of Dutch tilts and sort of slightly off angles, even in the scenes that are on Earth, to foreshadow that he's going to go into space. He has no choice about this, that's his fate. And I think it was really, really interesting, and an interesting way to portray that foreshadowing. And it also looks really cool. Like, this was a very, very pretty film. There's a moment later on in the film where they get to Tau Ceti, which is the uninfected planet. And it's like, you can see the green and red lighting, and then Rocky changes the viewpoint when he's in the ship, and it changes to like the red speckled, I can't think what the other term is, but like the speckled viewpoint. It's so pretty. It's so beautiful. Even Rocky's ship as well is very, very pretty. And like I said, I think music plays a big part in this as well. Even to the point where Rocky's ship, like, at one point near the end, Grace says, "Oh, it'd be quite nice to see your ship." And they go in, and it's all music, it's all piano strings, and like, you know, the way he drives the spaceship is to strum along these, like violin strings or piano strings, like all across the environment. It's very, very pretty, but yeah, again, music plays a big part in this. The way that Rocky speaks in his language is very musical and song-like. And even the soundtrack by Daniel Pemberton is fantastic. I haven't bought a film soundtrack in a really long time, but I really want to with this one, because it's, yeah, amaze. It's fantastic. Because there's a good mixture of like operatic music during the dramatic moments, percussion music during like some more sillier or like light-hearted moments, but they all work so well. And listen to the music, you know, on its own. It doesn't sound like it would fit with the scenes, but it really, really does, and blends in very, very well. The last thing I want to talk about is the ending, because I have a bit of a problem with it. So the ending, yes, you find out that Tau Ceti is uninfected because it has life on it. And the bacteria on the planet is eating the astrophage, which is why it's unaffected. Rocky and Grace end up collecting up the bacteria from the planet to help, to give back to Earth. He called it a particular name. I apologise, I can't remember what the name's called. But Grace called it a particular term. And He later finds out as he's going home, there's another conversation in the middle of the film where Rocky basically says that, I didn't know, this was so emotional as well, I didn't know you were going on a one-way trip, I thought you were going back home. And Rocky basically says, well, I've got enough ascophages to send you back home. But as he's travelling back, he finds out that the bacteria has eaten through the container that they cased it in, which is cyanide, which is also what Rocky's ship is made from. So Grace now has to make a decision of whether to save Rocky and go back, or to go back home. And I liked that this section was here, but I didn't like the pacing of it. I kind of get the weird feeling that this whole section and this whole scenario was longer in the book. It kind of feels like it, because this is at a point where it feels like the film's sort of wrapping up and finishing. And then this happens. Yeah, it feels like it might be longer in the book, because the pacing here with this scenario and this whole sequence, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I think the pacing was a bit rushed. Like, it kind of felt like a bit of an add-on, and they didn't really know how to get to the point of Grace ending up on Eridan, which is Rocky's planet. And yeah, it felt like they had to just rush that in to, like, you know, connect the dots. But I do feel like, I always say this, the big criticism I always have with films is, it feels too long. I feel like 10 minutes could have been taken off. This could have been so much longer, and it's already 2.5 hours, or 2 hours and 36 minutes. And I have heard that apparently the original cut was 3 hours and 45. Yes, please give me that. This is the first time I think I've ever said that with a film. I want to see more, because especially some of the pacing at the end, like I said, felt very, very rushed. I think it would make it just flow a bit better. But I also want more of this film. I also want a couple of things that were in the book that I've heard about. There's something to do with, and I'm not going to spoil the book, but there's something to do with the Antarctica that happens in the book. I do wish they had kept in here, because I think it's interesting. Yeah, I'm not spoiling that. You got to go read the book. I really recommend seeing the film as well. But yeah, I would happily have a nearly 4-hour cut of this. I'm not even kidding. This is the first film I've ever said that with. Like, I need it to be longer. Yeah, this was my spoiler video on ProjectHailMary. That was fantastic. I really want to go see it again. I probably will do next week. But I'm going to be away for a few days, and then the next review I'm going to be doing is on the Backrooms, which I'm very excited about. But I was Megan. This is BRWC. See you soon.